Thoughts and Prayers, another round of vacant stares, is on view at Shishama Manawan through August 13th to September 19th, 2020. This exhibition is an analysis of the American gun culture. It highlights artwork that examines the impact of guns have within our nation as a symbol of power and freedom or as an instrument to incite fear and cause harm. Firearms affect all American populations and demographics. The artwork featured in this exhibition is meant to facilitate a dialogue on the divisive iconology of guns and the power or fear they represent, as they allow some to become empowered while suppressing others. We are proud to partner with Moms Demand Action, Gays Against Guns, and Unload.
America was founded by Shannon Watts in 2012, and now, as the volunteer arm of Everytown for Gun Safety, we have over 6 million members in all 50 states. And I'd like to point out that Everytown was able to provide partial support to this exhibit with a grant. If you're interested in learning more about Mercer County Moms Demand Action, please join us via Zoom this Saturday for our regular volunteer meeting. My colleague Reba will put the link in the chat box at a certain time so that you could sign up for that if you'd like. We have meetings every third Saturday. Again, this Saturday, we're very excited that our special guest will be none other than Christy O'Connor. In addition, if you wanted to find out about Moms Demand Action in general or find out about a local group, you can always text READY to 64433. Thank you again, Christy, for curating this important exhibition and for inviting us to participate. We're really thrilled to be here.
Thank you, Marcia. And thank you, Reba. Reba Holly is also part of Moms Demand Action. So next we have Liz McGillis from Gays Against Guns. Liz, at this point, you can unmute yourself and share to us more about Gays Against Guns.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for having us here. So Gays Against Guns, we are a New York direct action group. We are a direct action group of LGBTQ people and their allies, so people of all genders and all sexualities are welcome, and we're committed to non-violently breaking the gun industry's chain of death. So we focus on the investors, the manufacturers, the NRA, and politicians who block safer gun laws. We work to ensure the safety of all individuals, but particularly the vulnerable communities such as people of color, women, people who struggle with mental illness, LGBTQ people, and religious minorities. And we're here today with our protest materials you can see in the background of Donna's video. And so I think we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. We meet every other Thursday now via Zoom. So if you're ever interested in joining a Gays Against Guns meeting, you can go to gaysagainstguns.net and register for that.
Thank you. And yes, by the way, I love the protest signs that Gays Against Guns donated for this exhibition. And Donna, can you also show the placards that are on that table? Liz, would you mind just mentioning about the placards and the human beings?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of our signature forms of protest is to hold space for people who have died from gun violence. And so we call those figures human beings. They're dressed in all white and they are veiled, and they hold these placards, each one representing a specific person who died from gun violence, a little bit about them, their picture, just to remind people that this is, there is a very serious human cost to gun violence, and that even though these people can't be with us today and they can't be with us anymore, we still remember them and we honor their lives.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Miggs Burrows. He is representing Unload USA. And Miggs, at this time, you are welcome to turn on your microphone and share with us.
Oh, thank you, Christy and Donna, for hosting this. Yeah, I'm on the board of Unload USA, and Mary Himes sends her regrets for not being here, and I'm here in her stead. So basically, Unload is a nonprofit created 2.5 years ago by Mary Himes and Helen Clisser-During in response to the paralysis of our government to pass any laws that reduce gun violence. In the absence of political initiative, we use the arts to illuminate, educate, and engage a broader coalition so we can end gun violence. In the past couple of years, we have hosted traveling art exhibits, dance performances, and films. We also do a summer art workshop for teens in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And we brought a photo mural by the French artist J.R. to the Quick Center for the Arts in Fairfield at Fairfield University. J.R. photographed 245 Americans for this mural, representing the full spectrum of American gun culture. It was actually on the cover of Time magazine last year. This work allowed us to bring together people from Moms Demand Action, Connecticut Against Gun Violence, Senator Murphy, the police chief, and even some gun owners. That is the power of the arts and why we think this work is important, so that eventually we'll find the common ground that we need to pass sensible gun laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Megs. So, yes, at this time, I'm going to begin a screen share of the virtual exhibition space. And I'm going to guide you through how you can find this on your own through our website at arthustle.net. So, I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. So basically what you do is you would go onto my website at hearthustle.net, and I will put that in the group chat when I am able to multitask a little better. And you just go and you click on current exhibition. And as you go through current exhibition, you scroll down to the word exhibition and view exhibition online. And it brings you to kunstmatrix.com through the Art Hustle profile. And you can see our 3D exhibition here and the list of our exhibiting artists and some of their works, and you click in to visit and it will load through. So this gives you a few options. You can either manually go through, or you could start a guided tour where it leads you through. I'm going to do it manually because the guided tour is fairly quick. So I'm going to enter the exhibition. And if you ever do this on your own or whatever, you can use the arrow buttons to move around the space. So left and right, forward and back. And you can click on individual images and find information about each work. So we're going to go straight to the beginning of our exhibiting artists. And so at this point, what I'll be doing is I'll introduce everyone that's in the exhibit. We have over 25 artists in this exhibition, plus our community partners. And we just had such wonderful artwork that we were able to share, and it was that was accepted into the exhibit. And I'm very pleased with the high caliber of work that went into this show. So the exhibit runs until September 19th. It's by appointment. I will show you how to create appointments at a later time. But our exhibiting artists include Nanette Reynolds Beechner, Chi Bravo, Kimberly Camp, Wendy Cohen, Pam Cooper, Leslie Ann Condon, Timothy Dill, Patrick Hay, E. Sherman Heyman, Kathleen, Cheryl Gross and Nicelle Davis, Joy on Fire, Gusty Kincaid, Kathleen Hurley Liao, local artist, they're anonymous, George Lorio, Tally Margolin, Brian McCormick, Church of Art, Stacy S. Pritchard, Margaret Relecki, Dominic Sansone, Danielle Scott, Joan Sonnenfeld, Sabrina Kanechi, Jody Walker, Sue Eldridge Ward, and Kristen T. Woodward. At this point, we're going to go in alphabetical order, and each artist can give a little bit of a background on who they are and their work. So we're going to start with Nanette. Nanette, if you are here, you can begin.
Hi, my name is Nanette Reynolds-Beechner. I am essentially a self-taught artist. I started first in show business backstage, doing sets and props in theater, and then later in film and television. So essentially the art that I do, the fine art that I do, is a mixed bag of mixed materials. I'm really not afraid to push myself in trying to get my message across. In terms of the work that I'm presenting here, I should tell you my background as a child. I grew up in many different countries, many of which were war-torn countries. So I have been and felt the fear of what it's like to be shot at, the fear of it possibly happening again. So I have a very visceral experience with guns. It's a very scary thing for me. And when I thought of this show, all I could think of and kept thinking of were the buildings, the houses that I saw as a child that were riddled with bullets. And I kept thinking about how the United States as a society is riddled with violence, with guns. So I wanted to literally create a wall, which is the US, our society, to convey that feeling that I had as a child, and that feeling that I have very strongly as an adult, that we have to do something about this. Anyway, I hope that that my work does convey that, and that you get that when you see it.
Thank you, Nanette. Our next artist is Chi Bravo.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chi Bravo, and I have what I call protection amulets in this show. And these amulets were basically a way of my way of dealing with protecting vulnerable communities and groups based on sex, race, age, and sexual orientation. So in the actual show, I have a pink cross, which represents women, a multicolor rainbow cross, which represents the LGBT community. And then I also have a black cross, which represents Black Lives Matter. And it's made up of, let's see, mega blocks, which also represents children found in these communities too. So these have been, it's been on my mind. Gun violence, you know, in the United States is so rampant, and it's scary, you know, and it's affecting a lot of these communities especially. And in light of what's happening now in the present political climate, it's even more rampant, you know. And so I created these to counteract these vindictive policies and divisive rhetoric by this administration, in hopes of somehow protecting, you know, if it could protect communities. Each amulet is surrounded by bullet shells, which seem to stop short of the amulet in kind of visualizing this type of protection. So it's actually a scaled back version of an installation that I have in mind, but this opportunity gave me this exhibition gave me this opportunity to at least present this idea. And thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Our next artist is Kimberly Camp.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for including me in the exhibition. I'm a painter and a doll maker. I've been working as an artist for over 50 years. I sort of balance between painting, which I started, and then making dolls about 30 years ago. And so the piece that I put in this exhibition, that I sent for the exhibition, is based on an iconic photograph of a woman she called her Stagecoach Mary. She's from the 19th century, and she was the first African-American woman to serve as a mail carrier in the Wild West. She was born into enslavement. She joined a convent. She followed the Reverend Mother out to Montana because of her health in North Dakota. And she actually was kicked out of the convent because it was said that she drew a gun on the maintenance man who was assaulting her. She was someone who I really admire because the ability to survive the degradation of enslavement and become so courageous and brave that you could ride through the Wild West with a shotgun or a rifle on your lap is a pretty amazing thing. I painted her in a red dress because 19th century, 20th century, within African-American culture, it was unheard of for darker skinned women to wear red. Only hussies did that, only loose women did that. But I put her in red because I felt that she was bold enough that if she could have, she would have worn that color. Of course, it would have made her a target out in the West. And I moved back to New Jersey from Eastern Washington State. So I had a particular connection to the gun culture that is there. And one of the things, two things, I guess, is observations. I've been back in New Jersey since 2012, late 2012, I came back. The gun culture that was out there was pretty daunting. There are a lot of people who have their if some of them would mute themselves. So as I was saying, I lived in Eastern Washington State for 5 years. The other part of my career was I was a museum president and CEO for 25 years. And I went out to Washington State to build a science museum. I was struck that after family gatherings, after, you know, the kids' graduation or Christmas Eve reception at people's homes, here we, you know, pour a glass of wine and talk about the game that was on last week or something interesting that was at the museum or a play that has come to town. There, they would go down to the gun safes and just start piling guns on the table to show each other. And people would look at me straight-faced and say that they were arming themselves for the race wars.
Oh my goodness.
And I, at one point, sort of joked to them and said, the only thing that we need to do to have gun control is for Black people to open carry. So the piece in many ways deals with a lot of the unspoken contradictions in our society and what it is that we look at in terms of empowerment. The fact that armed militia can go out and sit on a state capitol steps and not have any repercussions, and peaceful protesters are shot at. And so that's one of the reasons that I did Stagecoach Mary and why I continue to work with other mediums to try and address some of the issues that are in many ways weakening this country. When I was in the museum field, and I started at the Smithsonian, and I ran the Barnes Foundation for a few years, for 7 years. I was the first professional director in the history of the Barnes. But art can say a whole lot about violence that doesn't really have to have the exact images in it. And we need to really look at, and I've said this to people, this time, this period that we are in is so critical for artists to speak, because when it's all over, and at some point it will be, people are going to look to us to remember what they were afraid of, what they hoped, what they dreamed, what their aspirations were, what their children were thinking. Those are the clues that artists are documenting right now. So it's really important that we continue to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Our next artist is Wendy Cohen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy. I just want to say thank you to all of my family and friends who are tuning in right now. It means a lot. I'm an artist, educator, and curator based in Brooklyn. And this is the first show that I'm participating in since graduating. with my undergraduate degree last year. So I'm really excited and honored to be with all these amazing artists. And so I began my practice as a figurative painter, and now I work mainly in sculptural textile installations like the piece you see here. It's the large white one with the canopy coming up. So this piece is called Tree of Life, and I made it in October 2018 in the aftermath of the Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. And for myself, my own community, and many Jewish communities across the country, the shooting was a moment of intense grief over the lives that were cut short, but also fear that it so easily could have been our own temple, our own community that was targeted. And at the same time, this fear was intermingled with confusion and anger that it seemed like my non-Jewish peers, I was at college at the time, seemed pretty unaffected. And that after maybe some scattered condolences, their lives really seemed to go on. And I think this mixture of fear and outrage is something that as a country we're facing time and time again, kind of just waiting for the next tragedy to erupt. And it's something in particular that Black communities have to grapple with time and time again, based on systemic violent racism in this country. So I think with the whole theme of this show, we can't talk about gun violence without talking about police violence, and we can't talk about police violence without talking about systemic racism. So for this piece, Tree of Life, it's something that I made through tearing and twisting the fabric, and it relates to a Jewish mourning custom called Kriya. It's an ancient custom that's still observed today. Close relatives of a person who has died tear their clothing as a tangible symbol of their grief and anger in the face of loss. And I think these kind of symbolic and ritualistic practices can offer comfort to those impacted by tragedy. They can be really powerful tools of healing that rally us to fight for a safer and more equitable future. But we also need to be careful that they don't placate us and numb our rage, satisfy us so that we just stay quiet until the next tragedy erupts, because we know it's going to erupt unless there's collective action. So that's really what my piece is about, and I'm so honored to have it in the show with all these amazing artists. And thank you, Christy, for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for all of that. Our next artist is Pam Cooper.
Hi, Christy. Thank you for having me in this exhibition. It's much appreciated. I'm a mixed media artist and papermaker. I came to the States 30 years ago from the UK and spent my first 4 years in art school because I did a change of career, and I spent the last 25 years working as an artist. My piece in the exhibition is an installation of a schoolroom looking out onto a playground. This piece is in response to the shootings and the murder of 20 children and 6 teachers at Sandy Hook in Connecticut. I have 2 kids of my own, and I'm a grandmother. I have 6 grandchildren, and my grandchildren were about the same age as these kids were when they were killed. I not only make paper, I do all of the woodwork and everything that goes into these pieces. I make absolutely everything. There are 20 white canvas bags which represent each child. And it's not easy to see in the pictures, but there is a bookcase there, and there are 6 white books, blank white books for each teacher that was killed in this atrocity. Coming from England, I've never really understood America's love of guns, because in the UK, our police weren't armed. I mean, there were certain armed divisions of police, but certainly not the general police, were certainly not armed. But coming over here and finding out that people just had guns, and they didn't have just 1 gun or 2, they had 20 and 30 guns. And when my daughter-in-law was asked when she had a school party, a party for her daughter, birthday party, And one of the mothers asked, is there a gun in the house? Because her child was not coming into the house if there was a gun there. And it just blows my mind that this is what happens. And also during this pandemic, the gun shops were still open because they were seen as a necessity. I just don't understand that. Anyway, this is not the first installation I've done about guns. I did another one in 1999. This was about Columbine. Not all of my work is not all about guns. I tend to work more about children and what happens to children and the safety of children. So the gun culture certainly comes into what I work with. And thank you, Christy, for having this installation in your exhibition.
Thank you, Pam. So our next artist is Leslie Ann Condon.
Hi, I hope you guys can hear me. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So my work is actually virtual, so unfortunately you can't see it right now. Thank you, Christy, for including me in this important and timely exhibition alongside such talented and prominent artists. I'm Leslie Ann Condon, and I'm a Boston area visual artist, so that's why I wasn't able to get my work down there for this show. My pronouns are her, she and her. I'm also the guest curator and organizer of New Narratives, Reclaiming Asian Identity Through Story, an exhibition and storyteller series currently on view through Unbound Visual Arts. As an artist and emerging scholar, I'm focused on issues of representation in art, and am constantly learning about how best to create visual imagery in support of our BIPOC communities that acknowledges these past and present issues. I created bullet points in response to the growing instances of police brutality in the United States. Through my illustration piece, I'm drawing connections between state-sanctioned violence abroad on behalf of democracy and US police violence against its own citizens, specifically in regard to Black bodies and Black lives. Many Asian Americans are currently grappling with the anti-Black sentiments that permeate our communities, even in the midst of our solidarity efforts. In addition, immigrant communities often bear the intergenerational trauma of war perpetuated by US military action abroad. We often lose sight of that direct connection between domestic policy and our country's history of imperialism and a culture of violence. I'm excited to connect with other artists who are addressing such issues in their work and look forward to getting to know all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Sorry.
No worries, thanks.
Our next artist is Timothy Dill. Timothy Dill is from Bordentown, New Jersey. He holds a BFA at the Maryland Institute College of Art, and he has a photograph titled Silence in Arms Way 2 in our virtual exhibition space. Patrick Hay has two pieces in this exhibition. First one is titled Fifth Grade, Back Off or Eat My Lead, and the other one is titled For the High School. They're mixed media acrylic on wood panel. And Patrick's work is narrative tinged with personal nostalgia. His pieces contain a reference to a moment or an event,